Newly minted quarterback Dylan Lonergan gives Boston College the opportunity to have their best passing attack in years.
You are Locked On Boston College, your daily podcast on the Boston College Eagles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is Locked On Boston College, your team every day. I'm your host, AJ Black of Eagle Insider, part of the 247 Network. I've been covering Boston College for over 10 years. If you're looking for news, analysis, and scoops on your Boston College Eagles, you are in the right place. Locked On Boston College is a daily Boston College podcast, available 5 days a week, completely free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. On today's show, let's get into it. Injury updates. What does Grayson James mean to BC now that he's the backup? And man, we got to get into Dylan Lonergan's first day as QB1. But before we do that, today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. All right. On Tuesday morning, as we said on our special episode, we have checked it out, go get it. Dylan Lonergan was named the starting quarterback for Boston College. This was news broken by Pete Thamel, because of course, on Tuesday morning. And on Tuesday, shortly after that, after even Dylan tweeted it out, I love that he had that like 15 minutes before practice starts, he had his first practice as the starter. Now, we got a chance to watch him. And folks have been asking me, like, AJ, I haven't had a chance to see Dylan Lonergan. What is he like? What's he look like? He's smaller than Grayson James. I think Grayson James like 6'3", 6'4". He's like 6'1". So a little bit smaller, but he is quick. This is the part of Dylan Lonergan's game I love the most, is he's not like Tommy Castellanos fast. Like Tommy obviously is very fast. He's a smarter player than Tommy, though. He gets out and then he makes reads. He can throw the ball on the move. He can, plant his feet after running and throw the ball. And so on Monday or Tuesday, they did some drills that really impressed me. Now, first of all, of course, they start off the drills with red zone work. And that basically has the quarterback go back, with the defense in his face and try to throw, touchdown passes. What happens with Dylan Lonergan's first pass? He gets intercepted by Amari Jackson. I think it was Amari Jackson. Someone picked him off in the end zone. So that was like, oh, of course that happened. But then he settled down. He had a touchdown to Ty Lockwood. He threw another one. Yeah, I think he had Bond in the background. He was much more consistent. And then the drive that really showed me what Dylan Lonergan could do is they did this drive where, just pretend for a moment, they started at like the 20-yard line and asked the quarterback to just drive. They have the yard six there. You got to keep the ball moving. And he just hit pass after pass after pass. He had a good run from Turbo Richard in there. He hit Jaden Skeet, and I think he hit Ty Lockwood for a touchdown there. It was about efficiency right there. He didn't have a big throw in that grouping, but he took what they gave them. And that's something I think BC really needs to be able to do, is just take what the defense gives you. And he just moved, and he was able to score. Now, James, on the other hand, he did that, and I think he went 3 and out. That kind of shows you where things are at. Again, it was only one practice. But Bill O'Brien, he made his choice. I have said, and if you're an everydayer, you've been listening to this podcast, you've all kind of gotten the gist of where I was kind of leaning. That I've watched practice for 2 weeks. I've been there I think I've missed one practice so far, maybe 2 out of like 12. I've been there a lot. I've been living at Boston College for the last 2 weeks. I've been telling you for the last week and a half, it's close, but it's much more leaning towards Dylan Lonergan here. Like he during the scrimmage, I thought he looked better, especially when he was doing the red zone stuff. He was making plays. He had a bad interception in that, but other than that, he looked fine. I like the way he moves and avoids. He avoids pressure. Like we saw James last year avoid pressure, and what he did was crazy because some of those plays they got out of, I was impressed with. But I think that what Lonergan does is he avoids the pressure. Like he sees it and then just ducks out of it. Like he gets out of the pressure before it even gets to the point where he has to like shoulder off guys and stuff like that. He's just fast. So his processing speed, I think, is really good. His awareness in the pocket was very clear as well. Now, you ask the players what they think, and I'm sure some of them have their biases. I'm sure if you ask Ty Lockwood who he wanted, he's going to say his buddy Dylan Lonergan. They were teammates at Bama. I'm sure there may be a guy or two that was, more fond of Grayson James, but they're not going to say that. The players are going to rally behind whoever they have, and they're going to be able to get that offense going. Now, I just started this off by saying I think BC's passing attack, you're going to have to go years back to find one that's as efficient as this. Now, you could go and say like Dennis Grosel had, what did he throw, 500 yards of the game? That wasn't really efficient, though, because he was throwing a lot of interceptions in there, too. And there was other games that he was pretty good, but that was with Zay Flowers out there. The system itself with Lonergan, I think is going to be more efficient to getting the balls to guys like Lewis Bond, Jaden Skeet, Ty Lockwood, Jeremiah Franklin, Reed Harris. If there's a wide receiver I'm missing, if you're a parent, don't reach out and tell me I'm missing them. I'm trying to get everybody in there. But you know what I mean? Like, these guys are all going to benefit if this offense clicks. Because I still don't think we have seen the complete metamorphosis of what this offense should look like under Bill O'Brien. We're seeing pieces of it. And it's definitely changed from the last year. My gosh, what you had in 2023, which was Tommy Castellanos just improvising and scoring touchdowns for you, to what you had last year, which was much more of a pro-style offense. You still had Castellanos running it. He had no idea what he was doing. Then you had James, who was much more efficient with it, but he was more of a game manager. What's it going to be like when you find a guy that can be dynamic and make those plays? I think that's what you're going to get with Lonergan. I'm excited to see what he does. And, he's playing right now against teammates that know him. It's different. But when he gets out on that field against Fordham, what will Dylan Lonergan look like? I think he's going to take advantage of what he has out there. I think his ability to get the ball out and the guys that he has, like Lewis Bond. Just look at what Lewis Bond could do if he had a quarterback that could throw him the ball. We haven't really seen a complete Lewis Bond year where, he's able to do things completely throughout the year. Like, he gets passes here and there, but what if the ball is placed in a place where he can do some things with his legs? Same thing with VJ Wilkins. VJ Wilkins, we saw on Tuesday as well. Lonergan hit him right in the hands with a deep pass. There was no defender anywhere near him, and he should have caught it and he dropped it. But that happens. But that tells you again, his accuracy is good. His accuracy is better than Grayson James. I'm gonna say that. Not a knock on James, but in a moment, I want to talk about Grayson James because there's a bunch of things that are important about him, whether it's his role in the roster, how he reacted to all of this, and what he means to BC, because he's still a valuable player. I'll get into all of that in just a moment. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments, and then you don't have the full picture. You end up leaving money on the table. That's why there is Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use surface on your laptop or phone. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data, visuals, get smart categorizations of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. Now, for me, I have tons of subscriptions between my job and my TV and, I have streaming. I got everything. I don't even know half the things I still have. Monarch was able to help me figure that out. I was able to cut a couple of them and save myself money. Now, that was money in my pocket. Now, don't let your financial opportunity slip through the crack. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONCollege. Locked on Boston College, AJ Black here of Eagle Insider, and everydayers. Hopefully you enjoyed my special bonus episode on Dylan Lonergan that I released on Tuesday afternoon. I had to do an extra episode. We've talked about what it means that now he's the starting quarterback. Go check that out on YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. It's out there everywhere. Now, there's another player in this whole deal, and that is Grayson James. And I don't want this all to become a Dylan Lonergan discussion, because Grayson James deserves his piece of this too. Because there's a few things that we want to talk about with Grayson. First of all, I think BC Nation owes him a debt of gratitude for what he was able to do at the end of last year. Just remember what happened. He was supposed to be your starter day one last year because Castellanos couldn't figure out that offense. And then he gets hurt. He comes in, wins that Western Kentucky game in heroic fashion. It was a crazy when I was there as a fan that day. It was nuts. And, he hits Jerron Bradley for a win and then runs in a touchdown. That was a crazy end to that game. But then Castellanos gets healthy again. James goes back to the bench. Castellanos struggles. They bench him in the middle of the Syracuse game when I believe BC was losing that game. They put in James and the offense clicks. And all of a sudden they're scoring. They score 33 points averaging in their wins in November to beat UNC, Pitt, and Syracuse. 3 big wins. Now he struggled against Nebraska, but he was missing half of his offensive line. It was disgusting out. It wasn't a great game. But, the last year could have easily gone off the rails after Castellanos quit on the team. It didn't because of Grayson James. And so he is class epitomized here. And Bill O'Brien said so in his press conference on Tuesday. That, it was tough for him. Obviously, he was disappointed. But he said, I'm going to stick with this. These are my guys. I'm going to be with this team. Because that's what Grayson James does. Yeah, he got bad news, but he's a winner. He's not going to bail on his team. He's not going to leave. He's going to stay there. And I'm telling you right now, we have not seen the last of Grayson James. He will play a role at some point this year, and it will be glorious when he does because he deserves it. And what will he do this year? There's different routes that, Bill O'Brien for weeks has been saying that both guys will play. And I really do believe he's right there, that they will play. And hopefully, and this is not a knock for James, but hopefully Lonergan can stay healthy and he can make it through the whole year. But we will see. I guarantee we'll see James against Fordham in the season opener. And if there's another game where things get out of control. But you know what would be great? I honestly think if Grayson James wants to keep playing football and have his one last year, that he gets the opportunity that Emmett Moorhead got, which is, maybe this year he doesn't play and he redshirts. And I don't know if I think he has a red shirt left. Hopefully he does. NCAA is crazy. They'll figure it out. And then he can go somewhere next year because, he won't be a backup next year. It'll be Shaker Reisig or Lonergan if he loses it. But James should, hopefully he can go out there and play. Maybe go somewhere in Texas where his family's from. That would be a great opportunity for him. But what I wanted to say here is not just that he's the player, the kind of player he is. That Grayson James he's a BC guy through and through. He sat on the bench last year and watched a guy struggle and then took his opportunity and flourished. But he didn't grow an ego from it. He felt confidence, of course. You got to be confident to be a football player. They bring in over the offseason someone else to challenge him. And he loses. But he doesn't quit. He, on Tuesday, was out there working his tail off like this decision wasn't even ever made. He was out there with those guys, in 90-degree heat, busting his butt because he got that bad news and he didn't leave Bill O'Brien's office to quit. He left his office to get back on that field and do the work with his teammates and his buddies and his guys. That's what kind of guy Grayson James is. He's not taking a tough moment to quit. He is going to persevere and he is going to continue to figure out how to get to that next place. And he will find, because of that, he will get more opportunities. He will, whether it's at BC or someplace else. But how great is it for BC right now that you have a starting quarterback in Dylan Lonergan and that you're going into every game not gasping every time a quarterback goes down? Not feeling like if he gets hit hard enough, our season's over. And it's not just BC. This is a problem at a lot of schools, but mostly schools that like on the ilk of BC where we can't have huge quarterback rooms. Obviously Alabama, they got like 15 quarterbacks they can run through. But like BC's a little different. Now you finally feel that you can shoulder, what was it with Castellanos? He busted his shoulder or something. He tweaked his shoulder and had to miss a game. If Lonergan falls funny or, tweaks an ankle and has to miss a game, you won't miss a step with Grayson James. He's ready. He will be ready when they're needed. He's not the kind of guy that, and I can tell you from watching him at practice, that now that he's a second, he's gonna take it down a gear. That is not what he seems like. He seems like he will be absolutely ready if the need comes for Boston College. And that is the greatest thing about him. I think, again, I said it earlier, Boston College, owes a debt of gratitude to Grayson James. But the way that football works, you can't just guarantee someone the spot. That's just not how it works. And, it was some of the things that he did for BC, whether it was some of those passes that he made to Reed Harris or battling back against SMU last year, or all the things that he did to smush UNC and Pitt, or coming back to crush Syracuse. Those were awesome moments, and no one can take that away from him. And my hope, and he's a tough kid, I'm sure, that this is something that's not like crushing to James. That, like, yeah, he's on the field working his butt off. My hope is that, like, that he kind of continues to just, be resilient through all of this, because I know it's tough. I'm sure he must be really disappointed, but it was so encouraging to see, just watching on the practice field, a dude that just got probably some really, really bad news in terms of his football career, going out there and saying, you know what, I'm still working my tail off. And that's exactly what he did. Now, in a moment, let's get into some news and notes about BC football from practice. I'm going to talk about one positional group that really struggled on Tuesday and was worrisome. And I'm also going to give you some injury updates as well. We'll get into all of that in just a moment. Locked on Boston College, AJ Black here of Eagle Insider. Thank you all for joining me. And for all of you who have made Locked on Boston College your first listen, thank you so much. The new subscribers since we've been doing this has been tremendous. And I want to thank all of you who have made Locked on Boston College your first listen every single day. Now, injury time. Let's talk a little bit quickly about injuries. Now, I asked Bill O'Brien. There's been one name, and if you're a diehard BC fan, you may be wondering why you haven't heard his name much. Johnathan Montague. Have not seen him at practice. I've seen him at practice, but I haven't seen him practicing for BC. And I asked Bill about it, and Bill told me, Coach O'Brien said that he has an ACL injury, and we will not be seeing him this year. So there's the update on that. Now, Montague, you remember, he's the wide receiver last year, especially when Jaden Skeet went down, that played quite a bit. He was a former quarterback that Jeff Hafley brought in, who really wasn't a quarterback, but Hafley couldn't. He had trouble recruiting quarterbacks out of high school. They moved him over to wide receiver, and he made some good plays. I think he had one touchdown last year. So there was some hope for him this year, but he's not going to play. That's why you haven't seen him. And O'Brien's hopeful that he'll be back the year after. And while I'm talking injuries, speaking of Hafley, I want to say how refreshing it is that you get a guy like Bill O'Brien. You would expect him to be kind of from the Bill Belichick tree where you don't get anything. Bill O'Brien is absolutely a million times better at giving me updates on players and where they're actually at than Jeff Hafley. A million times better. Because if I asked Jeff Hafley that question, I can tell you, he would have told me, we're hopeful. He's banged up right now. We're hopeful. Because that's usually what I got for everything. But I get, all these players, I can actually talk about it because O'Brien gives us the information. Now, guys like Owen Stodmeyer, he's still out. That scary injury from last week, if you missed that episode, on Friday last week, there was an injury with Owen Stodmeyer that ended up with him going to the hospital. He was back that night. We don't know what the injury, that he won't tell me we haven't found out what that injury is. But he's been at practice. That's good. He's standing there. It's not doing anything, clearly, but he's back to just being with the team, not practicing. He's been there. We've seen a couple other guys that just, there's been guys that have been missing at practice, but you know what? BC practice is there's a lot of them. I think they have 5 this week in the 90-degree heat. Guys get days off. We saw a couple weeks ago, last week, we saw Lewis Bond take a few days off. I've seen Bryce Steele take a day off here and there. Different guys are out. Reed Harris was out today. He was sitting there in his shorts and a sweatshirt, which I thought he was a madman for wearing a sweater with his hoodie on in like 90-degree heat. I'm like, okay. But he had the day off, and I think that was probably just a maintenance day. And then, you get guys like Dwayne Alec. He was also out today. But the injuries have been okay so far. You've had a few guys get banged up a little bit. Obviously, Jalen Blackwell and Montague sound like two guys that probably won't be back for a while. Montague definitely. Blackwell, from what we've heard about, that's the linebacker. He's been out for a while. Now, before we wrap things up, let's talk about, you guys tell me I sometimes sound too much like I have maroon and gold glasses on and that I give too much positive stuff. So, want to hear about one thing that really worried me on Tuesday? Field goal kicking. Holy moly, was it bad. Luca Lombardo and Liam Connor got a chance to do, they were doing a drill. And the drill worked like this. They started at about the 50-yard line. They had Dylan Lonergan or Grayson James, depending on, where they're going, to make one pass. And they played defense, too. It wasn't like some of them, they'll have like the defenders back off and just do it to simulate it. They had the defenders there, so some of these just ended up with dead plays. But they got a few plays off where, they make it 10 yards. And then you have to try like a 45-yard field goal. And they did this a lot. I think at least 4 kicks each. I don't think I saw either of them hit a single field goal during this entire segment. Bill O'Brien was not happy with it after practice because and some of the kicks weren't even close. Some of them were, but they got to get better because they don't need another special teams issue again this year. But they really need to clean that up because that was not pretty. But what was pretty, and O'Brien actually talked about this after practice too, punting. Now, I have been very high on the punting. Bill O'Brien, to hear it from him means a lot because they did a couple drills where they had Seamus Florio and Andy Quinn, just basically booming kicks, and they were glorious. For all of us that have watched punts going off the side of their foot, or punts going into the offensive line, or punts that don't seem to go past the line of scrimmage, or whatever the stressful things that we saw last year happen, they were just like coming off their foot. Everything was 40-plus yards. It was amazing. Both kickers, Florio and Quinn, had an incredible segment there. And O'Brien shouted them out after practice because they deserved it. That should be exciting. The field goal kicking, not so much. I really, really don't want another year where special teams is a problem. And I really don't want field goals to be that problem. I mean, I guess they can get around it. They did it last year. But it would really be nice if from like 35 out, they could kick a field goal. They have been from the shorter stuff. The longer stuff has been a nightmare. At least this practice it was. And then in terms of just other things, news and notes from practice, VJ Wilkins, I think folks have been asking a lot about VJ, Rocket Wilkins. He's basically back to being a full participant. Remember, he missed the first week and a half of practice, and he would just be in the pads not doing anything because he tweaked his ankle. But he had a couple passes. Hopefully his hands get a little better because he had a couple tough drops today. But there was one pass, as I said, either on this show or the other show. Lonergan hit him right in the hands, like beautiful long pass, and he didn't catch it. But I think you're starting to see the speed because the reason why he was wide open was because he completely torched his corner that was on him. So that was our update. On Tuesday, I believe we're going to get Dylan Lonergan at a press conference. I'm really excited to hear what he has to say about becoming the starter. We'll have all that up on Eagle Insider. If you haven't checked it out, I have we have tons of articles up right now on Eagle Insider about Dylan Lonergan, about practice, everything like that. If you want to become a VIP, it's 50% off right now. And when you finish your full year, you get a Paramount Plus as part of your deal. Check that out. And while you're out there, follow me on Twitter at AJBlack247. Get me on Instagram, on Blue Sky, on Threads, on TikTok, on YouTube. We're everywhere. And I hope you have subscribed to our YouTube channel. I've been putting up shorts and all sorts of fun stuff up on there. I've seen a lot new. We've had the amount of new subscribers that we've had has been really strong lately, and I hope if you haven't already that you take advantage of that. So I'll be back again tomorrow with another episode of Locked On Boston College, your team every day.